Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to TrepTalks. This is a show where I interview successful e-commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders, and ask them questions about their business story, and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today, I'm really excited to welcome Joseph Watson to the show. Joseph is the founder of Canine Sports Sack. Canine Sports Sack creates front-facing dog backpack carriers that are veterinarian approved and safe, fun, and comfortable. And today I'm going to ask Joseph a few questions about his entrepreneurship journey and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. Now, before we dive into this interview, if you enjoy this kind of content, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And for more content like this, please visit our website, treptalks.com. And with that, Joseph, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today at Trep Talks. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Veterinarian, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it sure is. It is.
So, very interested to know about your story. I know, I've interviewed quite a few people, entrepreneurs who have created pet-based products, and always fascinated to see quite innovative and interesting products. And this is definitely one of them. So what kind of motivated you to create a business out of a or dog carrying backpack?
You introduced me as the founder of the company, and while I do technically, officially, legally own the company, I am actually not the founder. My wife and I, we'd been married 3 years or so. We lived in a small apartment, and my sister-in-law called us up one day, and she was a janitor at an elementary school in Salt Lake City, which is about 30 minutes north of us. And she indicated that she had gone out at the end of the day to throw her garbage in the dumpster, and she opened the lid and something was whining at her from down inside the rubbish. And so she, kind of jumped back scared and then looked in, and there was a little cage inside the dumpster, inside of the garbage, and there was this little tiny puppy that was dehydrated and hungry, and who knows how long she had been there, long matted hair. So she pulled the dog out, and my in-laws already had a dog at the house she was living at. And so she called us up and said, well, I need somewhere for this dog to go for the weekend. I can't take her home. Can you come and get her? So we met her halfway and grabbed the dog, with the caveat that we cannot keep this dog. Our landlord will not allow it. We're
Hmm.
going to school full time. We both have, two full-time jobs apiece trying to make ends meet. We're in a terrible position to have a dog. We will help you on Monday find this dog a family, but we are not a permanent situation here.
Hmm.
And at some point that weekend, it was right about the time that the first How to Train Your Dragon movie came out, and it's pretty obvious that they fashioned that dragon to look like a dog or a cat or kind of a hybrid of a pet that people love. And we were sitting there watching that movie, and of course it gets emotional toward the end, even for an animated film. And we looked down, and Dumpster Daisy, as we had dubbed her at that point, was laying with her head on my lap, and she was laying with her tail on Jen's lap, my wife,
Hmm.
and realized very quickly that this was permanent. We didn't speak it out loud because we were, apprehensive.
Hmm.
But Monday turned into a week, and a week turned into a month, and a month turned into 6 weeks, and we just never did find her a home. And finally, we found ourselves at our landlord's house, kind of begging, "Can we keep this dog?"
Hmm.
And he said yes. We paid a modest pet fee or whatever, and talked him into it. Told him, well, she'll be good, which she wasn't. She was a terrible puppy, and she was
Hmm.
all matted. But we it was about that time that we got into a cycling hobby, which is kind of another vocation that we didn't have time for. We were um, so busy, but my brother got me into cycling, so he let me borrow one of his bikes, and we ended up we would ride 25 miles a day, and I started training for a bike ride that's called the Lotoja. It goes to Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's about 206, 208 miles, and we had no plans for any of this to happen. We were just trying to ease our guilt because we had these little windows that Daisy would, press her face up against,
Hmm.
and watch us as, she'd get smaller in the distance as we'd ride out on our
Hmm.
bicycles. And it just broke our hearts. And so we thought to ourselves, we did the same thing any sane pet owner would do. She needs exercise. We need exercise. Let's just, have her jog beside us. So we went for a ride, and she made it about a half a mile and then laid down on the side of the road, just, where we were riding, just with this look on her face. It was I'll just die right here. You guys, if you come back this way, pick me up. I will not take one more step. So, I picked her up, put her under my arm, and of course, I'm right-handed, so I'm holding my bicycle with my left hand, and that's the front brake, which means if you press on that too hard, you're going over your handlebars.
Hmm.
And it was a harrowing ride home. I hit curbs and it was bad. It was really, really ugly. But the idea of carrying a dog, taking Daisy with us and carrying her kind of stuck in our minds. And within the next couple of weeks, the guilt kind of ate at us again. So we did what the next step that anybody would do is we went to our local pet store and we found this front carrier, which was absolutely hilarious. We thought it was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. And we walked out of the store just laughing our heads off. We put our cycling gear on, put Daisy on the front. And of course, it had this wide mouth and you could cinch it up around her neck, which didn't really stop her from jumping out at every dog we passed because she's a very social dog. And,
Hmm.
my knees would bump into the bottom of her and she'd jostle around, which was even more hilarious, but like super dangerous. So
Hmm.
we made it about a mile and a half before we got tired of my knees bumping into her. And so, we went back to the house and took that carrier back to whatever our pet store we had gotten it from. And that, kind of kicked off a years long quest where we would buy a carrier and it just wouldn't work specifically for the bike rides that we were on. We bought a sling and I got back from, about 8 miles and my shoulder was just aching. we we took we found this carrier that enclosed dogs on the back and it was really really high quality, but it's a poignant part of the story that we didn't just find a dog, we found that particular dog in the dumpster because she wanted to be a partner. She didn't want to be luggage. She every time we drive somewhere, she's looking out the windshield, helping us, drive, telling us what direction to go in. I mean, she's involved with the process. We have a
Hmm.
second dog that just lays down in Jen's lap and doesn't care where we go as long as she's with us. But Daisy, she wants to see out. She wants her head in the wind and she loves that. And so, she ran back and forth inside that enclosed carrier and threw my weight off side to side. And, it was heavy and cut into my back. So we sent that one back and we bought a rear facing carrier where she like sat in with her head out, but she was facing backwards. And we made it probably 10 or 12 miles before she started whining. And then we went home and we put her down on the front yard to let her use the bathroom as we do after a long ride. And she wobbled about 5 feet and then just threw up all over the ground, got sick all
Hmm.
over the grass, and then laid down. And we ran her straight to the vet and had a $200 bill that we couldn't afford, where they told us that, guess what? Dogs can get motion sick. Same way that we
Hmm.
look back with the car, we can get motion sick, they get motion sick.
Hmm.
Um, we went through probably 8 or 10 different carriers and they just didn't every one of them just did. I mean, they worked and they had value for maybe going to the store or going down the street or traveling on an airplane or something like that, but we wanted to ride our bikes
Hmm.
and we wanted to go hiking up in the mountains and we wanted something that was lightweight, flexible. And we basically, the front carrier, we made a list item that said we wanted to go on our backs, we don't want it to be on our fronts.
Hmm.
We the rear facing carrier, we wanted to be forward facing.
Hmm.
The sling, we wanted to be on both shoulders, so it's got to be a backpack. It's got to be, and there just wasn't anything. And we kind of gave up for a while, probably almost a year, maybe a little less.
Hmm.
We kind of gave up. But I did the Lodaja. I rode all 206 miles or 8 miles or however long it is. It
Hmm.
took me, it took me an entire day to do it. And I vowed I would never do it again. But
Hmm.
I got home, they gave me this little like swag bag, the little bags that have the drawstrings that you take your
Hmm.
shoes in or whatever. So they gave
Yes.
me one of those with some literature and some, free things in it. And I took it home and threw it on the floor,
Hmm.
and then laid down on the couch to die, basically. And I turned and looked, and Daisy was laying on top of that bag with her tail just going like a propeller.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty thick. It took me a minute to kind of put it together, but I realized that she thought that we had brought home another carrier for her to
Hmm.
try. And she was animated. She was so excited to go out. And I guess I lost my mind. I don't know. Maybe I was too tired to fight back or something. But next thing I know, I'm pouring a squirming little dog into, this drawstring bag and, feet first. And I went outside and rode, I don't know, another 5 miles and came back and it was like, oh my goodness, this works. It's
Hmm.
forward facing. I mean, the strings went up around her torso,
Hmm.
and balance was all off. But I got home, and even after 5 miles, I took my cycling jersey off, and my wife just screams like ah, and I had these big purple marks on my arms, on my shoulder, my collarbones. So she took an old backpack, school backpack we had laying around, and cut the shoulder straps off and sewed them onto this little drawstring bag. And I went for another ride. The balance wasn't quite right, so she added, this hole that went up around her neck, and she had armholes where her arms came out the front, and it was hard to get her into it because we just buttoned around the back. And so we added a zipper, and it got to a point where we kind of had an idea of the design that we wanted, and it fit all the criteria, which we didn't hadn't put all that together quite yet, but it did everything we wanted to do.
Mm,
Jen went to Joann Fabrics, bought a bolt of fabric, and made the original canine sport sack. And I mean, it's weird looking. It looks like a pillowcase with backpack straps on it, but it
mm,
worked. And so we rode around for probably another year using that bag. Just that we had gotten what we wanted out of it, and
mm,
were blown away at how many people stopped us along the way. We were embarrassed. It was embarrassing to us. We were like, don't look at us as we went by people,
mm,
that are like real cyclists, professional people. But we were accosted basically
mm,
by crowds of people that expressed identical desires and
mm,
concerns. And like we have been looking for 15 years. We got our dog. Our dog's getting old, and we'd love to take her or him for a ride. And we just don't know what this is what we've been looking for. We
mm,
had a guy offer us $300 for that janky, like
mm,
original prototype that we had. And we were like, we'll make you one. And he left us his contact information, and we made a second one and never could get a hold of him. So we had a second bag that we gave to a friend or something.
mm,
And it started to dawn on us over time that, we had it was three things that kind of dawned on us simultaneously. Like, we had stumbled onto something useful and
mm,
fulfilling and brought joy, and that we were not an audience of one. Like
mm,
we were a bigger audience than just us. And the third thing was, the longer we kind of kept it to ourselves, the more
mm,
selfish we started to feel. And so
mm,
we had no intention of starting a business with it. I was getting a master's degree in history. My wife was a dental hygienist. We were headed in a certain direction, and we're like, hey, this could be kind of a cool little side hustle. Let's send it off to a little manufacturer. We actually borrowed $2,500 from my father-in-law, who very skeptically gave us a check, like, I don't believe that enough people will do this, but here you go, try it out.
mm,
And we went and did one show with that rudimentary prototype type design. We had, I think, 50 bags, 50, maybe 100, but it was a really low amount of bags, and they were all in one size and one color.
mm,
And the show went from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And by noon, we had sold completely out. And
mm,
we were blown away. We're like, wow, if this is a side hustle, this is the real deal. And over the course of the next couple of years, we, did more shows and ran into a marketing guru who said, look, you've got a great product. You just need to get it in front of people. And we joined up with him. We have since kind of bought out his stake in the company, and we have a marketing department that does his job. But it kind
mm.
of organically grew. And then one day, my wife and I looked at each other and went, look, we're working 40 hours at our jobs. We're working 60 hours for Canine Sports Sack. Is there a living here that we could do? Like we're too busy. We haven't, watched our kids grow up or anything. And so within a couple of weeks or maybe a month or two, we were full-time Canine Sports Sack. And from that point on, it's turned into this nice little company where we have a catalog of bags. That original prototype grew into kind of a more sophisticated model. We put more amenities onto it. And then once adding more features to it could only take it so far, we bifurcated into two models, and then we had two models, and then those turned into four models and four different things. And now we have a whole catalog. And I mean, we had people asking us, your bag tops out at 30, 35 pounds. My dog's 60, 70 pounds. I want to carry
Mm.
my dogs. We created a monster bag, and, we thought nobody's crazy enough to do this, and they fly off the shelf. People absolutely love them. It has a frame and a lap belt. And so we just kind of organically grew into this company. We've got about 20 to 22 employees in Lehi, Utah. We are developing the next round of our products that are far more like inclusive and more, complex, but simple in a way that makes them more sturdy and structured, but they don't lose any of the structural integrity. And, we've got some stuff coming up that's really mind blowing, but that's how we got from there to here.
That is such an interesting story, and that answered a lot of the questions that I would have asked you anyways. But I guess that's kind of the best best kind of validation, right? When, you're out with a product that you've created, or, you don't even call it a product, it's something that's solving
A
your
solution.
problem. And then people are stopping you and asking about it, then you kind of
Yep.
inadvertently hit on something.
Yep.
One question that I have, you said that this comes in, you've created in different sizes, but to me it seems like, are people carrying really, really large dogs on their back? I mean, is that really what are people? So this is targeting a very specific kind of a use case, people who are cycling or people who are going to like camping kind of a situation.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. So we created it specifically for cycling, and it the first couple of versions, when we would hike with it, it kind of laid too far down on our backs, and I didn't like the way it kind of turned Daisy into a hammock. And so really cycling was perfect because you're leaning forward and the dog's leaning forward. But we had enough people that said, "Hey, can you kind of retool this so that it will do more than just cycling?" And so we built it so that the bottom of the bag actually, and people probably don't even notice it, but the bottom of the bag angles up like 20%.
Hmm.
So that when the weight of the dog is on it, instead of the bottom of the bag kind of flopping against the owner's back, it just goes flat. So the dog is higher up on the owner's back. We moved the straps higher on the body of the bag, and then we added. It's actually we had we you asked a question about manufacturing. We manufactured in the United States, and then at some point that just got flat out too expensive. We just couldn't do that anymore. So we went overseas, and we actually traveled overseas and vetted different factories and things like that. And the first run that we got from overseas, the bags were just garbage. They were not, and we had to spend every dollar we had on them. We're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And we realized that the design of the bag was kind of a foreign concept. The backpack straps out of a normal backpack, they come out of the top of the bag, like right like this. Ours came out of the middle of the bag like this, and that was a harder seam to figure out. But I had an old sewing machine that my mom had gotten me, I don't know, when I was 16, that I had put in mothballs on on the shelf. And I pulled it out and I started sewing a little basting stitch underneath where the straps were. And I sat there every day for 15 hours a day just sewing those straps and reinforced them just enough that we could then sell them and make a little money off of them. And then we sent them out, and the next wave of bags had bad zippers. And we were like, oh man, this is like, are we really going through this again? And so I was sitting there in the middle of the night worrying about it. And I came up with the idea of putting a little pinch clip that went across the zipper.
Hmm.
And we started sewing these little clips across. We'd get them from the factory and we'd sew them across so the zippers were indestructible. And what we noticed was the back of the dog, that where previously the zipper, their weight would press against the zipper, it pushed their backs up straight. And we were like, oh my goodness, these are not just zipper enclosure straps. These are lumbar support straps.
Hmm.
And we put those on every bag starting at that point. And then we realized, oh wow, why not just put them right on the outside of the zipper? Let's put them on the outside of that seam. And the new bags that we have coming out this fall, the lumbar support strap goes all the way around the bag to the farthest seam that connects with the back padding. And when you cinch it down this way, and it takes all the extra material and sucks it to the dog. And so your dog, it's form fitting to your dog. Kind
Hmm.
of wish we'd done that at the first, but you pick things up, as you go along. But if we hadn't had those early mishaps, those early misfires,
Hmm.
we wouldn't be as far as we are, because we wouldn't have had to sit there and go, okay, how do we make it so that in the event that something like this happens, we still have a design. People they're not carrying a laptop, they're not carrying papers, they're carrying a living, breathing animal, and they have to be right. And so our newest designs, every model that we've come out with, the next version, it's
Hmm.
that much safer and that much more inclusive. And it just, it's all because of a mishap that happened early on that drove us to get to this point.
I know on your website you have a page for sizing, right? So you have sizes from extra small to extra, extra large. I'm just curious, like, because I'm just trying to imagine, a really large bag on someone's. I mean, it's going to be tiring for the person also to carry, and I'm sure the dog is probably going to be a little bit, um, uh, you know, uh, confined in there as well. Do you find that you sell more bags of smaller size versus larger size, or is that not even an issue? Like people are who love their pets are willing to basically carry them anywhere.
The early idea was, now remember that the very first version, that version that we took to the pet show, it was only one size, and that was Daisy's size. That was it.
Hmm.
And it tapered a lot, but it actually fit her. Every dog, so the 50 bags that we sold at that first show, they were all like identical sizes of Daisy.
Hmm.
Every dog that was slightly smaller drowned in the fabric, and every dog that was slightly bigger wouldn't even fit. So the next version, of course, we widened it, and then we added some straps along the sides that cinched down. We've over time we've widened it, but created some sort of a way that could be cinched down to form fit the dog. And every time we did that for the first 5 years or so, our market was exclusively dogs that were like maybe 30 pounds or less.
Hmm.
And based on the sheer amount of feedback that we got from people that had dogs that were 40, 50, 60 pounds, we were like, okay, do we make a bag that only goes up to 50 pounds? Do we make a bag that goes, I mean, do we do one that makes 10 pounds heavier? And we're like, you know what? We've got enough people asking. Let's just go for broke. Let's go ahead and build one that'll hold a 90-pound dog. And we
Hmm.
did. We built, it was called the Rover, and we've since renamed it the Colossus with a K.
Hmm.
And I mean, we've put a 127-pound dog in it. Now, we only have it rated up to 90 pounds. So if you put a dog in it that's over at 90 pounds, you're on your own. So our
Hmm.
warranty only covers 90. But we have put massive, massive dogs in it, and we have had people buy this extra, extra large bag and then send us pictures of their, German Shepherd on their back. And for me, I wouldn't do that. I would make, and they make their dog walk until they're tired, and then they put them in the canine sports. Like, of course, you don't want to rob your dog of any valuable exercise.
Hmm.
But when they get tired, how are you going to carry them? You carry them under your arm? What are you going to do? Put them over your shoulders? There's really no way to carry them.
Hmm.
And so we created it and yes, they do fly off the shelves, and we get great reviews about them. They are, I mean, we have pet people. Let me put it this way: pet people are nuts in the best possible way. And so when we created that, we created something that just filled a need, and they love it.
I completely agree. As I said, I've spoken with a few pet businesses, and it seems like, pet owners are really, really passionate about their pets, and they're willing,
They're special breed.
personalization. Exactly. Um, I'm very curious. So you said you got some funding from your father-in-law, $2,500. How did you sell it to him? And he was skeptical. And so was he kind of like an angel investor? Did he get a return on his investment?
Ooh, my father-in-law is not a spender. He's very parsimonious, let's say that, with his money. And I when I went to him and I told him about this idea, the look on his face was it was like this, like, what are you serious? Like, and to be honest, he really did say this. So I married into a family that has three boys, three girls, and two parents, and they are all spectacular people. They're just, I mean, I'm scatterbrained. I'm all over the place. I'm a dreamer. My wife is very pragmatic. She's very stable. She's very, she could run a Fortune 500 company, whereas I'm barely pulling it together day in and day out. But I went to my father-in-law. I threw the idea past him, and he looked at me and he said, I would be remiss in my responsibility as a father and father-in-law if I did not voice my concerns. I do not believe that there are enough people on planet Earth that want to carry a dog on their backs so as to necessitate an entire company or order's worth of these bags. But
Hmm.
if anybody, he's cutting the check as he says, he's like, and if anybody can figure it out though, it's Jen, my wife, and hands me the
Hmm.
check. I'm like, thanks for the vote of confidence. So it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the fact that he believed in his daughter, and I was being dragged along for the ride. And so that was the deal. He believed in her. And to be fair, she and Daisy are very much the bosses, and I do what I'm told.
No, that's very interesting. So you talked a little bit about your manufacturing. Are you getting is this getting manufactured in the US, or are you getting this made somewhere in Southeast Asia, China?
We are having it made in several different countries. Some of them are in Asia. We just we have never done business with a factory that we have not traveled to and visited first. We've been very careful on that front. But we discovered very quickly that there was no way that we were going to be able to sell a backpack that was in the price range of our target demographic if we were continuing to manufacture them at the costs demanded within the
Mm.
United States. So we did go overseas so that we could manufacture them in the tens of thousands instead of the, hundreds. And when we did that, that was kind of when it took off. We still had to tinker with the quality of it, and we had to add things that would mitigate, potential quality issues. So we've been very careful with our design. We've been very careful with our manufacturers. We've built a process that really eliminates any margin of error for any wide margin of error. But yes, we do have them manufactured overseas in the event that a factory in the United States can do it for the right price, and we can fulfill our customers' needs at that price, then we would definitely come back. But until then, we are overseas.
No, I think that makes complete sense. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with manufacturing overseas. I mean, yeah, I'm sure most businesses do it these days just for the cost reasons. I'm curious. So I'm sure, as you said, there were other designs in the market, other competitors, and you've kind of created your own version of it to meet a certain kind of use case. Have you found, given that you had a good response from the market, I mean, it usually happens that when a product starts selling, you get other competitors, copycats, especially from China, if you're building in China, um, who create similar products and put it out in the market. Have you encountered anything like that where somebody is kind of taking your designs, which is what your proprietary thing is? You've created your own designs. Do you find you have copycats now, or people creating similar products, and how are you kind of dealing with that?
Anytime and this is a lesson that I have learned that is at the top of the list of lessons I have learned by running a company. Remember, I had no experience when we came into this. The lessons that I've learned along the way, I learned them, hard knocks.
Yeah.
But if you create something that fills an active void in a market, there are people that will always see dollar bills. Remember, we created this because we were asked to. Yeah, we make a living out of it, but really everybody in our company, we don't use the word product. We use the word solution because that's
Mm,
what we're doing. And really, our goal is to share the joy that the Canine Sports Act has brought to us. But we did protect it legally for sure. You can't patent a backpack. Backpacks have been around for millennia. So you
mm,
can't patent a backpack, but you can patent parts of a backpack that make your backpack distinct and have a different utility than what came before it. So the zipper that goes straight up and down the back, the armholes, the collar enclosure with the armholes, the mesh that goes down the sides, all of those things that made the canine sports like what it was, that made it valuable, that made it
mm,
work, and those are the building blocks of the canine sports act's entire value. Anybody that has had to who has tried to knock us off, they've either had to contend with, they've either had to not to create a bag that's identical to ours, but the quality doesn't really seem to be there, or they've had to go around all of the features and facets on our bag that make it valuable so that theirs doesn't infringe upon legal intellectual protection, in
mm,
which case their product is in my estimation, and I don't mean to bash any of my competitors, but if you take away all of the features that make the canine sports sack work, that make it valuable, make it what it is, you end up with an inferior design. You just do. It's
mm,
just simple math. We have an influencer. He actually had several thousand Instagram followers. We're small time too, so we sent him a canine sports sack, and within a couple of months, he had created a pretty good sized following just by taking pictures of the people that were taking pictures of him while he walked around the city with his dog in a canine sports sack.
mm,
And he came a while later and demanded an exorbitant amount of money from us. And I told him that I don't even pay my own employees that. I'm not going to pay you. And we kind of parted ways. Then before we know it, he has a bag that is trying to compete with ours. And yeah, it's the second, you know, original forward facing backpack dog carrier. But yes, he did have to go around all of our design implementations. He's had to I mean, his story is a direct rip off of ours. Um, yes, we do find on Amazon, eBay, all the time, we find somebody who looked at a product that we created over the course of 3 years that we built around a living, breathing dog and went, huh, wow, we could do that, and builds it. Um, we just, the best thing we do is we just keep innovating. We just keep on building the next. While they're knocking off last year's version, we're already working on next year's version. And once we release it, you know, it's just, we're using real customer feedback from real customers with real dogs, and they are waiting for us to come out with the next version so they can knock it off. And by the time they've knocked it off, we're on to the next version. And that is because of our awesome customers. They are absolutely amazing. So yes, there's a lot of infringement. We have kind of led a renaissance, I guess. If you look at the market data up until about 2012, it's like search history for backpack dog carriers is like flatlined. And then in 2012, 2013, it spikes. The only difference is that we came along and then it never goes back down. And so, yeah, there has been an explosion of lots of pet carriers. There's a whole subculture, I'll call it, of people that want to carry their dogs. And, hopefully they get the carrier that is right for them, whether that's a sling or a backwards carrier, front carrier, whatever. Hopefully they get the one that's right for them, even if it's not a canine sports sack. We're just glad to be part of a culture of people who finds joy in carrying their dogs. And for those who find our solution to be the one that they need, we love them and we will continue to innovate for them.
That is so true, right? In any industry, any area of business, some innovator comes up with a new idea and then it gets copied. Like it's the never-ending story. And so I think it's really about, I guess, creating a brand, creating your own story, and having people who kind of, align with that story, or and as you said, coming up with new products, continuing to innovate, and I think that's what will continue to keep you different. Um,
Exactly.
what have you learned about your customers? These are really hardcore pet pet lovers. Who's buying from you? Have you learned anything unique about your particular customers?
Oh my goodness. I could write a book on our customers. They're fascinating. The psychology of the pet owner is really fascinating, and the changing sociology of the pet owner culture is really fascinating as well. I will say this. We've learned a ton about our customer. Um, if we can sum them up in one kind of comprehensive statement, they are a special breed of people. And what makes them special is the inordinate amount of love that they are capable of giving. Even, an animal that, I don't know, 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago would have been, a tool. They would have been chained up in the backyard to take for hunting. They would have been, now they're family members. These people love their dogs and they want what is best for their dogs. And if they want what's best for their dogs, and I love my dog and want what's best for my dog, then my obligation is to provide the very best experience I can for them, right?
Hmm.
They We hardly ever have anybody call up. We call up our customer service department and just tear us to shreds, because these are loving people. They're people that are they love a dog, which makes them intrinsically kind, understanding people. They usually work with us pretty well. We have a customer base that is second to none. They are a special breed, and we love them for who they are, not in spite of it. They are, when we go to these shows, I'll give you an example. We've done probably hundreds of shows since 2014 all over the world. I myself have put probably over 80,000 dogs in canine sports sacks. And if the front row seat to their faces lighting up as they realize what they can now do with the best friend that's on their back, if that was the only thing driving me, that would be way more than enough. These people, they bring their dogs in, and they are, the love they have for their dogs, it is radiating off of them. And my job is to make sure that I connect the love they have for their dogs to the safety of their dogs while they're using our product.
Hmm.
And you know, it's a fun deal. We love meeting our customers face to face is the funnest part of this job. because watching them light up, watching them realize what they can now do, watching them all of a sudden find a solution may have been looking for a long time, and that's a rush you cannot get anywhere else. So yeah, our
Mhm.
customers are very awesome. They're incredible.
Is there a difference between, of course, your product is targeted towards dog owners. Is there a difference between, do people want to carry their cats on their back, or that's a different?
You
Uh,
know, I'll be completely honest with you. If I could go back in time, I probably wouldn't have named the canine sports sack the K9 sports sack. I just we did pigeonhole ourselves into the dog market. Um, cats are different. They when you put them in a carrier, they fall into a puddle in the bottom. They don't have the same, rigidity that a dog has.
hmm,
But I'd be lying if I told you that I mean, just about once, twice, maybe up to 3 to 4 times a show, we have a couple of people that walk up to us, handful of people that walk up to us, and they got a cat in the canine sports sack, and they are just tickled to show us off that it's not just a canine sports sack. We have begun working on a cat carrier. We are still in the process of learning more about the anatomy of cats and the needs of cat owners and stuff like that in order to make something that works better. But yes, there are tons of people that use the canine sports sack for their cats as long as their cat fits in it and is rigid enough. And the new products that we're coming out with, the ones that cinch down better,
hmm.
they will hold cats better because there's not as much room to just like, melt in the bottom of the bag. It does hold them up better. So yes, we are trying to help people that want to carry their cats. They do not seem to be as ubiquitous as people who want to carry their dogs. But yes, we are trying to build something that will accommodate them as well.
Now, you said that, of course, you found a really great product market fit. And as you said, you kind of partnered with some marketer before, and now you've bought out their stake. So do you really find that the bottleneck kind of in your business at this time is really how effectively you can market this product in front of the right audience? And that's really kind of your bottleneck right now in terms of growth. And how are you doing it? What is your best marketing channels and strategies?
Oh man. So I'm the bottleneck. I'll be totally honest with you. Um, if somebody were running this company who knew more about business than me, Canine Sports Sack could probably be double or triple the size. It's my inexperience. Um, I Somebody who has been there and done that would probably be more sensitive to risk, but be able to navigate them better. Our marketing is not our bottleneck. Our product development is kind of people are always asking what's next.
Hmm.
They'll buy a bag and they'll use it for 6 months, and then their question is, well, what's next? What's the next update? So we have an entire developmental department who works on the next product. Yeah, there's a certain speed at which we can get the canine sports sack in front of the world. Basically, let me put it this way. There are two things that we do at Canine Sports Sack. By creating the Canine Sports Sack, we have created an experience, the experience of being able to carry a dog forward facing on your back where your dog is no longer luggage, but rather a co-pilot. That's a
Hmm.
new experience. Our job now that we have created that is to improve that experience so that it is better for everybody who is either currently using it or will use it in the future, and get that experience in front of as many people as would possibly find benefit or joy from it.
Hmm.
Everything we in every department is to fulfill those one or both of those goals, whether it's a product update that makes the product work better, or whether it's a marketing push to go into a new country, we've gone to Brazil and done pet shows and people just rave about it. They're begging for it around the world. I would say it's not necessarily our ability to get the canine sports sack idea in front of them. It's a lot harder to ship it from either the United States or from a manufacturer overseas and get it to them. I would say distribution, the ability to get physical product into every country where people really could benefit from the canine sports sack, that's the bottleneck. They want it. They
Hmm.
know it, seen it. It's just either we have to ship it from the United States and contend with customs fees and exorbitant shipping prices, or we have to find somebody in that country who will buy it in bulk and then send it from the
Hmm.
manufacturer. And it's a delicate balance, but we do have a department working on that too. But that is our bottleneck, is getting physical product to the places that really need them.
Which countries are you shipping in right now? Like, where have you kind of solved that problem for now?
The United States we've got the United States is very we've got it covered. We have a 3PL company, a third party logistics company in Canada. We have one in Europe. Um, that Australia, Japan, a lot of Asia has really taken to it. Um, we have the next country on our list. I would say Brazil is probably the next country. Um, Basically, anywhere that we have done a show where they have had an enthusiastically positive response, that's kind of the next on our list. But those ones that I just listed, they're the ones off the top of my head who have somebody on the ground there who saw the value of the Canine Sports Act and was willing and able to take enough of them into storage or whatever that they could sell them for us or buy them from us and sell them on their own. Those are the distribution networks in Australia, Europe, Canada, United States, Japan, the rest of Asia. That's where it's easiest to get a hold of. Anywhere else, it's kind of a wait till it comes into stock in the United States and then pay whatever it costs to get there, which we're trying to fix, of course.
By the way, we are at 6:31 now. Do you have a few more minutes to for a few more
I,
questions?
I have time. I have time for sure. Let's
Okay,
do
okay,
it.
okay. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, so the next one is your channels. So I know that you have your own website, and I know on your website there is a wholesale section as well, and there's I believe I saw a retail section as well somewhere. But can you talk a little bit about your channels, where you're selling, and which channels are working the best?
No, you're right. We have basically three overarching channels. We sell on caninesportsact.com, we sell on Amazon, and we sell through wholesale channels. Now, my favorite is wholesale.
Mm.
Just because I like to look a customer in the eye, it gives you the best opportunity to explain the product and train somebody face to face and all that good stuff. It was really that's the funnest of all of them. When somebody else can benefit, whether it's the financial benefit of the store owner or the customer who's buying it, getting a face-to-face training. That one's my favorite. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to and sorry, we've got a soft place, a space in our hearts, because at our very first show, we had a store owner walk up to us and say, "I'd like to carry these products in my store." That was just down the street from where we lived in Las Vegas at the time. And we went and talked to her, and she walked us through the process of getting like product liability insurance and hang tags and UPC symbols and things that hadn't even crossed our mind yet. So we have come to love the small, strip mall stores of people that are just trying to make it work with a little pet store. Whatever we can do to help them grow, that is our favorite. Right now, I would say they're probably revenue wise, those three are probably equal. There are others. There are some that I love selling through more than others. There are some that are easier than others. There are some that are easier to find than others. Most of it, if it's outside the United States, most of it is through our wholesale channel and through stores and e-commerce that's in that particular country. If it's inside the United States, most people either get them from a local store. We have about 5,500 stores worldwide that we sell to. But
Wow,
yeah, they are on Amazon and on caninesportsact.com.
that is awesome. I mean, 5,500 stores. That's quite a bit. I
We're pretty good.
wonder, like,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wonder, for your direct to consumer business, like your website, is it margin wise? I mean, I know for wholesales, of course, it affects margin, but with the direct to consumer, you probably have to spend more in marketing. So, do you find any difference in terms of margin, or at the end of the day, what Amazon takes
I'd
versus,
have to,
yeah, is it pretty much the same at the end of the
I
day?
would have to, it's within a certain margin from each other. We've done what we can to, like, for example, Amazon. Yes, Amazon costs more than to sell on our own website, and they have marketing fees and things like that. But we also ship in bulk directly to them from our manufacturers, so the shipping costs are less. So we found ways to kind of ameliorate that overarching cost. Um, they I would have to look at the numbers. Yes, some of them do cost a few dollars more than the others, but we've made really every effort we can to make sure that each channel is as financially advantageous for us as it is for our customer and for the third party that is selling them if there is a third party involved.
Makes sense. I know you talked about your team. Can you talk a little bit about your, what your team looks like? I believe you said you have 26 people or something like that.
Mhm.
What are the different departments and, who's doing what?
So we have I call it the wheel of reciprocity, I guess. Each department kind of feeds into the next. So we have a department that is our product development department. They focus only on the data that we get from customers, tangible, quantifiable data that we can take from customers and make better products and add-ons. We have some things like, I'll give you an example. We have a product called a snuggler. Now we're retooling the snuggler, but several years ago we had customers contact us and say, do you have a jacket or a sleeve or something that go inside the canine sports sack that can keep my dog warm? So we created it looked like a sleeping bag with armholes and a hood.
Hmm.
The dog couldn't walk around in it. So we are making a version that you can either take the bottom off or it doesn't have a bottom. But we have a bunch of products that specifically interface with the canine sports sack or with the brands. The brand of canine sports sack is all, concise, easy to carry, lightweight, easy to use tools for hiking, camping, whatever you're gonna end up doing. So we have some tents that fold down into nothing and some, little blow up beds that fit in the bottom of the tent. So if it interfaces with the canine sports sack or the canine sports sack experience, that's kind of what we're focusing on. So our product development department, it takes all the product data from customers. I wish it had this. I wish it did this differently. I wish it was bigger. I wish it, whatever, wish it was more simple to use. And we implement those changes, test them out. And then if they are viable, we put them on the next version of that bag, or we create a version of that bag that does that particular thing. And then we have another side of the product development department that works on just the supplemental items, things that aren't necessarily a carrier, but make the carrier experience more valuable. And then they turn over the process to the marketing department, who gets it in front of as many people as they can. And then the customer service department, who helps walk people through the purchase process or helps people answer questions or whatever. We have a wholesale slash sales department that is in charge of just getting them inside of stores. We do have a department that just runs Amazon. It's our smallest department, but we do consider it its own standalone department. And then we have a warehouse where we do stock in-house and we do ship from here. And we actually, a few years ago, we had our it was the dog, what are they called, service dog market. There's a
Hmm.
section of people that have dogs that have service dogs, and they
Hmm.
indicated to us that in order for their dog to be identified as a service dog, they have to have a patch that goes on the outside of the harness or leash or collar or whatever the dog is wearing that indicates them as a service dog. And when they were in a canine sports sack, there wasn't any place to do that. So we started adding a little 6x2 hook and loop patch on the back of the canine sports sack. And of course, the next question was, well, we don't want to buy your bag from here and then a service dog patch from the store. Can we just buy them from the same place? So we started buying these ready-made service dog patches. And then the next question was, wait, well, I want to put my Instagram handle. I don't want it to say service dog. I want it to say at whatever, Instagram handle you are. And so I went out and bought an embroidery machine and I
Hmm.
taught myself how to embroider. And that exploded very, very quickly. And then I remember the day I was, there is always a certain amount of breakage for bags. I hate to admit that on a podcast, but the reality is, when you're building bags at that speed and in that quantity, you're always going to have a seam that just doesn't get sewn quite right. And so we replace those and make sure that the second version is better. And we do test them out before we send them out, but there are always things that are overlooked. So we have a less than 0.3% breakage rate,
Hmm.
which at the rate that we're selling bags ends up being a pretty good sized pile of bags. And I remember
Hmm.
going out to the garbage can, the dumpster behind the warehouse, and just dumping these bags in and going, man, this is tough. I've spent a lot of time and effort on these bags. And then I went back in the warehouse and I unrolled a roll of fabric that I had bought at the local store. And I went, man, this is just expensive. These patches, I mean, they're just expensive. And I went, I wish there was a place that I could get a bunch of fabric that didn't cost me so much. And all of a sudden the light bulb lit up and I went back out of the dumpster, grabbed all of those returns that we could no longer sell as either new products or refurbished products or whatever, the products that were basically dead. And I started cutting them up and making fabric out of them. And now when the bags that are returned that come in that we cannot sell as a clearance item, a refurbished item or, at a discount, we can't put them back into stock because they're unopened. If they are absolutely destroyed, we wash them, we take the fabric, we cut the fabric out of them, and that is what we make our patch. So we recycle the old canine sport sacks to make the patches, and that is an entire department. So we have 5, 6 embroidery machines that go all day long. We have 3 people that stand down there and just cut bags and make patches and then package them up and send them out to the warehouse. And so that's its own department. But that is, I mean, basically there's one final department that evaluates all the data from all those departments. People like this about the product. We marketed this well, did this poorly. Our customer service is succeeding in these areas or not. And then they feed that data back into the circle and we improve our process. So we do our job, and then the next time around we improve our process, and it just keeps going around and around and around.
Well, that is so interesting. Very briefly, I want to ask you this in terms of your future. It's you have you started out with a hero product, right? I mean, that's your main seller. And now that you have kind of a market recognition, you have a brand, you have a community of people who are using your products. Do you think that, and I think you are already talking about product development, but do you think the path to growth from here is really just adding more adjacent product categories in the pet space, and that can give you a bigger base of customers?
No, no, we've tried to do that. There is a point where adding another product, this is our philosophy. I'll try to make this as quick as possible, but basically product A, you have 100 customers, right? That's your market. If you introduce product B, ideally you'd like to introduce a second 100 customers, right? It means you created a product that does something totally different from product A. But the reality is there are a certain number of people who walked away from product A because it didn't do exactly what they wanted. There's a certain amount of people who bought product A because they would have bought product B if they had known it existed. And so there's always going to be a certain amount of overlap. So instead of adding, having 200 customers, if you had 200 customers, yay, you created another product that does, something totally distinct. If you have the same 100 customers, but now there's 50 per each, you just reshuffled your market. There's got to be a Venn diagram right in the middle where, there's enough overlap. Usually you add, you end up with not 200 customers, but somewhere in the middle, like 150 who buy product B because now it exists, who, it kind of reshuffles it and adds. So it splits the difference. We have introduced products in the past that we thought were solidly enough in their own hemisphere that we could introduce them. And then we realized afterwards that it just causes confusion because they do too much of the same thing. They, maybe a bag carries a dog that's 5 pounds heavier. And then we find out that both bags actually are rated at the same and they do the same thing. And so we've actually worked really, really hard not to just introduce a new model ad infinitum. What we've tried to do is we've tried to make our current products do as much as possible. And then once we reach that threshold where no more features or facets or bells and whistles can be added to it that will make it go any further or do any more, that's when we introduce a new product. And so we actually, we have right now 6 levels. And the idea is each level of bag holds a heavier dog for a longer period of time. If you're going 5 minutes down the road and your dog weighs 5 pounds, you might as well use this lightweight one. If you're going an hour down the road and your dog weighs 50, 80, 90 pounds, you want to use, this one on this end. And in between, they all go up by 10 minutes and 10 pounds or, up, a certain amount. So the longer the time and the bigger the weight, the more you're going to be happy with the next level up. Well, even with that disparity in our models, we found some confusion. So we are actually furloughing a couple of our models and taking the things that customers find valuable from them and making them applicable to the other bags. So the other bags are gaining value at no additional cost. We're simplifying our catalog and we're making sure that our existing products and products we're keeping still do the same stuff without so much overlap or having confusion. So no, adding another product, we only do that if we can verify that we are going into a brand new market, we're doing something brand new. I'll give you an example. in order for a dog to be, or a dog carrier to be airline approved, the dog has to be fully enclosed in the carrier. So that usually means one of the duffel bag carriers that has the mesh on the side so the dog can see out. But we are forward facing backpack dog people. That's kind of our modus operandi. And so we have created a canine sport sack where it, for all practical purposes, it looks like a canine sport sack, but the sides pop out into a duffel bag and the top rolls down and it becomes a duffel bag that you can put over your shoulder. So it is airline approved. It's totally different from anything that any other canine sport sack does. It goes into a new market. Nothing that we have that is head out in the wind, forward facing backpack dog carrier is airline approved. And this new model is, and that's why we're introducing it as this brand new model. Even though we're introducing that model, the rest of our catalog is getting a simplification makeover where the products do more, are better, are simpler, but they're still like the quality is still going way up and there's less of them to confuse our customers.
Awesome. In every entrepreneur journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned, failures. Has there been any big failures or lessons learned in your own business journey? What did you learn, and what can other entrepreneurs learn? You can tell about your the top one or two.
You mean today? This week, this month?
Anything that is that was a big kind of a setback for you.
I'll give you the example that pops into my mind. Now, I have one canine sport sack that hangs on the wall of my office. I used to have an entire display, but we moved into a new warehouse and I took I have a lineup of all of our old bags, like the original OG canine sport sack all the way to the modern version. And then I have one of each model. I put that in kind of its own museum, but I kept one version of the canine sport sack in my office, and it is to remind me of the mistakes. It was called the Flex. It's actually hanging right here. You can't really see it, but basically, sizing is our biggest bugaboo. Even though we have created it in extra small, small, medium, large, and even some sizes that are extra large and extra extra large, and we have little booster blocks that go in the bottom that split those sizes and further tune the sizing. We still have customers that call in and say, it's bad. My dog is too wide, but too short, or too long and too narrow. It just doesn't fit right. My dog isn't comfortable, and so we were sitting there one day, my wife and I, kind of ruminating about the ideas of what ways could we make a one size fits all. And we came up with the idea, when you have a suitcase, like the big, carrying suitcases, we have one zipper that opens it up, right? Then you have a second zipper that pops it up 3 inches or whatever. So we created a canine sport sack that has 2 zippers at the bottom, each one that pops the fabric down 2 inches. So if your dog is short, you just zip up those zippers and it puts it up. And then if you unzip it, it makes it longer and more narrow. So the first version of that was essentially an old looking Air 1 sort of a bag. And the Air 1, you can Google it and the images come up. It's a very simple, early prehistoric version of the canine sport sack. And it was just an identical version, but it had the 2 zippers at the bottom. And for some reason, we started adding, we took every iota, every modicum of customer feedback, and we started shoveling it into this one product, the lap, an internal frame, a storage pack, we basically took everything that customers wanted and we rolled it into this one product. And when it showed up on the surface, on paper, it was a home run. But we immediately had customers calling us and saying, you know what? You say to put the dog's arms in first, but the zipper, instead of it being this long, it's this long because now you've got 2 zippers at the bottom and you can't cross over. If we had gone simply at first, we would have had a far less expensive lesson to know that start simple and then add things into it, or create a product that does a couple things, because this thing, it is as complex a bag as you've ever seen. And we were so excited about it because it did everything our customers wanted. And it was the only product we've ever had to recall. So I keep that bag on my wall to remind me to do your homework. Don't make what you want. First of all, the color is green because I went to a physics professor at UNLV and said, what's the coolest color that's not white? Because who wants a white bag? They'll get dirty really easily. And he went through the color spectrum. Well, Roy G. Biv and green's right in the middle. So it's the coolest color, the color spectrum. So pragmatically, I made them green.
Mm.
Guess what? Everybody hates the color green. So we got a bunch of feedback. Well, are you ever going to make these in different colors? The zipper was too short. There was too many moving parts that created too much failure. And it was an abject loss because we did what we wanted to do. And we shot for Mars instead of, a rocket to Mars. If you're off 1 inch, you end up on Pluto. We reset, and now we run Canine Sports Sack like a drive to work, where if you miss the exit, you can still turn around and go back, and it doesn't cost you too much.
Mm.
It really, that was the biggest lesson, was don't get too ahead of yourself. Don't try to do too much at one time. And when your customers ask for something, do what they want, not what you want. And that has probably been the most detrimental lesson that has catapulted us toward our greatest, education and our greatest, foundation for the future.
Yeah, it's a great lesson in product development, and just the product in general. Anybody who works in product, it's like, you have to, I guess, you have to always get the customer feedback and test with the customer to see what they like, and I guess incremental improvement, not it's like
Yep, absolutely.
yeah.
Take it one step at a time, for sure.
Now I'm going to move on to our rapid fire segment. In this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you have to answer them maybe in a word or a sentence or so. So the first one is one book recommendation for entrepreneurs, and why?
Oh man, I would recommend the Lean Startup. The Lean Startup was one of the books that I read when I was looking for like a business 101 sort of a book. I basically, that was where I got the analogy of flying to Mars or driving to work. The Lean Startup, it poses the idea of taking a working prototype, a working product or a solution that isn't necessarily perfect, but you don't necessarily know where to go with it either, and go ahead and release it and let your customers tell you what's wrong with it so that you can create the next version better. And you got the funding to do it. You don't want to present an imperfect or an incomplete product to your customers, but if you're there and it works and you're, and you can take it one step at a time, go ahead and release your product, take the chance, take the risk, and do it as one baby step at a time as you can. The Lean Startup was probably the book that was most instrumental in me. I swing for the fences. I'm a dreamer. I see the finished product of something and I have to go for it. And that was the book that reset me to, you know what, take it one step at a time. You'll get there. Go ahead and envision your destination, because that's the first decision you make when going on a trip, is like where we're going. That's the destination. But remember to plan one length of travel at a time, and carefully plan it out and take one step at a time, and you'll get there, but do it carefully, do it methodically, and all of that.
An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about?
Ooh, innovative product idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape. I'm not entirely sure. We keep on stumbling onto different inventory systems that are better than the last one. We keep stumbling onto different marketing platforms. I can't really think of one that pops into my head right now.
Anything
But
that like when you first came across it, it was like, wow, this seems interesting.
You know, I would say this. Now, this is the one that pops into my head. Now, I may get off of this video and realize that there's something more powerful than this. But what pops into my head is, I write on these little notebooks right here. See, it's hard to
Mm,
carry a computer around with you everywhere you go, and I have ideas that occur to me in the middle of the night or in the
mm,
middle of driving, and so I carry these little notebooks and I write my ideas down. But when I'm done with them, I have two choices: put them in like a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document or something like that, or I can organize them into something like a Trello board.
mm.
Trello, or there's one called Task Manager or something like that. The ability to take my to-do list and organize it in a way that I can check it off, and I can take each task and look at it microcosmically. Like, here's what the company needs. Here's what the company needs from each department. Here's what each department needs from each job. Here's what each job needs from each project. Here's what each project needs from each task. those organize those into the macro to microcosmic structure. And that for a guy who's as scattered as me, those organizational systems are probably the biggest advancement in technology that I have found, because they take a guy who likes to write on a piece of paper and puts everything in an organizational digestible format.
Makes a lot of sense. Another startup or business in e-commerce, retail, or tech that you think is currently doing great things?
Oh man, I tell you what, um, we it's I don't know how much they're a startup anymore, but we did our first show. It was called Super Zoo. Somebody came to us and said, "Are you doing Super Zoo this year?" And we're like, "We don't even know what that is." And come to find out, it was in Las Vegas where we lived at the time, and it was it's the in the top five of the largest, most attended pet shows, like business to business pet shows on the planet. And we got there and set up our booth, and it was of course really really rudimentary. And just down the way from us, there was a company called Scouts Honor, um, Skouts Honor, Honor. They made um, like a like a Febreze type of thing, although Febreze covers up the smell. This would actually like eliminates the smell. We use it when we wash returned bags that we're gonna turn to patches. It really does eliminate the smell, but their marketing is phenomenal. They like to collaborate with other companies, which is something we've liked to do. We've liked to find other up and coming companies that we can mentor that will be a benefit to us for sure. We don't want to waste a bunch of time on a company that's just going to flop, in 6 months. But if we can identify a company that we can help grow and they can help us grow together, Scouts Honor is the one that taught us how to do that. I love what they do. They add their advertising. You walk into Super Zoo and you walk on these big pads that say, you know, have you tried Scouts Honor lately? Or they've got all these little sayings and things. They've got a marketing department that's second to none. They have expanded from just stuff that you spray on pet smells or whatever, to laundry detergent, to really, and they just keep on adding to their product lineup. And I mean, they're really innovative, and they're really inclusive when it comes to finding the companies that were where they were 2 or 3 years ago and helping bring them up to that level. Scouts Honor is probably the business that I think is currently doing great things that I really admire.
Awesome. A peer entrepreneur or business person whom you look up to, or someone who inspires you?
Ooh, um, you know, it might sound you know, um, it might sound like a platitude, but my dad, um, I know everybody uses their parents, but my dad was a chiropractor for 25 years. And then one day he decided he didn't like touching people.
Hmm.
And I'm number eight of nine. So I have eight
Wow.
siblings, one little sister, and seven older siblings, several of whom actually work for Canine Sports. I can do a killer job. But my dad was driving from the mountains of North Carolina, where we lived, at the end of a goat path. He was driving them out predominantly to Brigham Young University or Ricks College, which is now BYU Idaho, and other Western-based universities. And every time he would drive on the interstates across the United States, he would think, "Man, I wish I just knew what was up at this next exit." And so he drove off at a Walmart and bought a little micro cassette recorder and started recording what was off of every exit on every interstate in America. And
Hmm.
every time he took one of my siblings out to college, he would drive out one way and come back a different way. And it really, it took him years. I mean, you just imagine the Herculean task that was ahead of him. It was, I mean, I look back on it, and it took him probably 6 or 7 years to compile his first book, at which juncture the information had already changed. Half the businesses were out of businesses,
Hmm.
and there were a whole 60% more businesses that have cropped up since. But he stuck with it. It was his dream. He made it work. He made a living off of it. Now he didn't grow it to the size of Canine Sports Act. He did not. He didn't want to grow, so he didn't hire a bunch of people. I wanted to grow Canine Sports Act to see where it could go, and I couldn't do that by myself, so I enlisted some help. But the fact that my dad took on such a massive task and plodded through it methodically and was so careful and was so and just his stick-to-itiveness, I think about that when I want to quit and give up, because I mean it happens. I get burned out. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. You talk about the knockoffs. I mean, I go home and I'm like, well, why would somebody do that? Well, I remember my dad, his advice, his, careful, calm, demeanor of how he ran his company, even though he didn't manage anybody. And I would say that kind of recenters me that I can do this. If he can do that, I can do this. And he really has inspired me to be an entrepreneur, to work for myself, but to be the good entrepreneur that is easy to work with, honest, even if it costs us, to be honest, and to be part of something that makes the world a better place. That's what my dad taught me.
That's awesome. Final question. What is the best business advice that you have ever received or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Oh my goodness. Now I have had certain types of business advice. I actually I have a friend who told me don't be fooled by the 40-hour work week. And what he meant was work as many hours as you can and then die early, but that's not it. I would say the best business advice would probably I would go back to that book. I would go back to the lean startup. Um, and be reminded that the best business advice is if there's a risk, take it, but be careful. Take careful risks. Do your homework. Take it one step at a time. Be methodical. Don't swing for the fences. If there's a chance that you could actually end up striking out, go for something that is attainable, and learn as you go. And as you learn, implement those lessons into the next version of what you're going to do. That is probably the best business advice I have gotten because I am a fence swinger, and being able to kind of recenter and go, okay, let's take this one step at a time. Let's build a product that goes just far enough that we can prove that there's viability to it. Let's do a marketing campaign that takes that we can grow into, stuff like that. The best business advice is don't be scared by risks, but don't take unnecessary risks either. Find a balance in between, and you'll generally do okay.
That is such a great advice. It's and with lean startup, and I think that it works for all kind of businesses or anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship. It's almost like you have to find the balance between, I always say, or I always think is like you have to find the easiest way to make money with your business idea or quickest way to make money first. But at the same time, you can't forget about the long-term quality of the product. At the end of the day, longevity will come from like the quality of the product. But I think in the beginning, you have to, some people, go for years and years working on a project, but never monetize, never sell. I think it's people have to be very quick in terms of trying to monetize their idea first.
I've learned this is not somebody else's advice, but I've learned if you work hard, you will never want. If you are honest, then you'll always be in the right. And if you're kind, then you'll always have friends. That's it. That's the best thing I can come up with. If you don't have the right on your side, then you are wrong, which means that you're not being honest. If you're unkind, you don't have any friends, you're all by yourself. And if you don't work hard, then you don't get anything done. Those are the three things that if I could give any advice to anybody, is work hard, be honest, and be kind, and you won't have to worry about really anything else.
Very true. Very true. Well, Joseph, I know we went a little bit too late into the interview. I really appreciate that you shared your time so kindly and shared your story, shared your successes and lessons learned. So thank you so much again for the opportunity. If anybody wants to purchase your product, try it out, what's the best way they can do that?
Probably caninesportsac.com, or you can look at your local store and see if they have it. If you want to try it out on your dog before you buy it.
Awesome. Well, Joseph, thank you so much again. And yeah, wish you all the very best in your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.